I was standing at the Denver airport check-in counter when I learned exactly what my parents thought of me. The agent scanned my confirmation code, frowned, then scanned it again with that careful expression people wear when they're about to ruin your day. "I'm sorry," she said slowly, "but your ticket shows as canceled. The refund was processed about an hour ago." My throat went dry. "That's impossible. I didn't cancel anything." She turned her screen slightly toward me. The refund went to a card ending in 4401. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet because I knew that card number. It belonged to my mother. Before I could process what that meant, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, then twice. I pulled it out with shaking hands and saw 2 texts from Mom. The first one said, "Have fun walking home, loser." The second was even crueler. "Try taking a bus like you should." No emoji to soften it. No pretense of a joke. Just the word loser sitting there on my screen, sharp and deliberate as a slap across the face. Around me, travelers rushed past with their rolling suitcases and coffee cups, living normal lives where mothers didn't sabotage their daughters for sport. I stood there frozen, not sure if I was breathing or drowning. It wasn't just the canceled ticket. It wasn't even the money or the ruined trip. It was the sudden, awful clarity that my parents didn't just dismiss me. They enjoyed it. They needed me small, struggling beneath them. And for the first time in my 31 years, I understood that no amount of patience or kindness was ever going to change that. I walked out of the terminal into the cold morning air, my vision blurring at the edges. My hands fumbled with my phone as I tried to order a rideshare. But before I could finish typing my address, a white sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver leaned out the window, an older man with kind eyes and graying hair. "You all right?" he asked gently. "You look like someone just dropped a piano on your day." I let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "Close. A text message." He nodded like he'd seen enough of life to understand what I meant. "Hop in. I'm technically off shift, but you look like you need to be anywhere but here." His name was Harvey, and for the next 20 minutes, he just listened. No advice, no judgment. Just a stranger offering the kindness my own family never had. I found myself telling him everything. The canceled ticket, the texts, the years of swallowing comments I should have screamed back at. When he finally pulled over near a quiet city park, he rested his hands on the steering wheel and said, "People pretend cruelty is love all the time. Doesn't make it true." Those words echoed in my head long after he dropped me off at my building. Most people who met me assumed I came from one of those warm, chaotic families that fill restaurant booths on Sunday mornings. I had what people called a gentle face, the kind that must have grown up around affection and inside jokes. I never corrected them because explaining the truth felt exhausting. My family didn't love me. They controlled me, diminished me, and punished me whenever I tried to exist outside their narrow expectations. Growing up, my older sister Leah was treated like a limited edition prize. She got the new clothes, the decorated bedroom, the framed photos covering every wall. I got hand-me-downs from neighbors, lectures about gratitude, and a spot on the floor during holidays when all the chairs were taken by real family. My father never started the cruelty, but he stood close enough to warm his hands by it. He'd smirk or shrug or pretend he didn't hear the comments that cut deepest. That was his way of choosing sides. By the time I turned 17, I'd been kicked out of that house twice. Once for talking back. Once because Leah didn't like sharing the bathroom. Standing outside in a Colorado winter with nothing but a trash bag full of clothes taught me something crucial. If I wanted safety, I'd have to build it myself. So I did, quietly and without permission. I worked through college, took every internship nobody else wanted, studied financial planning in campus libraries that smelled like burnt popcorn and old carpet. I saved every dollar I could and learned to make myself invisible. Years later, when I finally bought my small condo overlooking the lake, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The concierge knew my name. My 6-year-old son had a bedroom where no one told him to stay out of the way. He was the only person in my life who never made me feel like I took up too much space. My parents never understood that my distance wasn't rebellion. It was survival. Even after I became a financial consultant, even after I built a life from nothing, they still treated me like the backup child. Leah remained the golden daughter with the perfect husband and the curated Instagram feed. And my parents bent over backward to please her. So when I saved enough for a short trip, just a few quiet days where no one could reach me or demand from me or diminish me, I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not my father, not Leah. I just wanted peace. But secrets don't survive long in families like mine. And the moment my mother discovered I was leaving town, she made sure I'd pay for it. That morning at the airport had felt strangely calm before everything fell apart. I'd kissed my son goodbye, promised to bring him something from the gift shop, and watched him wave from the doorway with his hair still messy from sleep. For the first time in weeks, I'd allowed myself to exhale. I blended into the crowd at Denver International. Jeans, a long coat, nothing that suggested my world was about to split open. But when that agent told me my ticket was canceled, and I saw those texts from my mother, something fundamental shifted inside me. I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. When I got back to my condo that afternoon, I didn't cry or rage or call them to beg for an explanation. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and clicked on a folder I'd kept hidden for years. It was labeled Options, and inside were documents most people would never think to keep. Mortgage payment records, a trust deed, lease agreements, and proof that I quietly owned the house my parents had been living in for the past 2 years. They thought they were renting from some faceless management company called Elmrook Trust. They had no idea Elmrook Trust was mine. I scrolled through the files slowly, feeling the anger sharpen into something colder and more precise. Every page was a reminder that while they were busy dismissing me, I'd been building something extraordinary. They thought I lived poor because I drove an old car and wore simple clothes. They never imagined I kept my life quiet to protect it from them. But those texts at the airport made one thing painfully clear. Protecting myself wasn't enough anymore. I needed to protect my son. I needed to stop pretending their cruelty was something I could outgrow or forgive my way past. Memories rose like ghosts. Leah shoving me toward the door one winter night because her boyfriend didn't like extra people around. My mother telling me to stop being dramatic while I stood outside in the cold with just a backpack. My father handing Leah cash on her college move-in day, then turning to me with a lecture about earning things the right way. All those moments blended into a quiet, simmering truth. I couldn't keep letting them take from me piece by piece and call it family. Then I remembered something. The last time I'd stopped by their house to drop off a receipt, I'd tucked a small baby monitor in my bag because I didn't trust leaving my belongings unattended around them. I hadn't meant to record anything, but when I played back the audio file that night, their voices filled my kitchen. "She thinks she's better than us," my mother said, her tone dripping with contempt. "Cancel it. Teach her a lesson." My father's voice followed, casual and cruel. She can take the bus. She always acts like she's struggling. Maybe she should actually struggle for once. Their laughter came next, light and easy, like they were discussing an inconvenience with a stranger instead of their own daughter. I sat back in my chair and let the anger settle. Not hot and wild, but cold and methodical. I wasn't going to fight them with insults or match their cruelty with my own. I was going to use the very thing they'd underestimated most about me: preparation. By late afternoon, I'd drafted 3 eviction notices, one for each adult living in that house. I double-checked the lease terms, the payment history, the violation notes, every signature they'd scrawled without bothering to read the fine print. Everything was airtight. As the sun set behind the lake outside my window, painting the sky in muted rose and gold, I slid the notices into a plain envelope. My hands didn't shake this time. For years, they'd told me I was too soft, too quiet, too willing to forgive. Maybe they were right. But softness isn't weakness. Not when it finally chooses itself. I placed the envelope on my counter, took one steady breath, and whispered to the empty room. I'm not going back as their daughter. I'm going back as their landlord. 3 days after the airport, I stood at the end of my parents' walkway, staring at the house I used to tiptoe through. The lawn hadn't been mowed. The porch light flickered weakly. Leah's SUV sat crooked in the driveway like she'd parked in a hurry, probably because she always assumed someone else would fix things for her. I tightened my coat around me, walked up the steps, and didn't knock. I turned the handle and stepped inside. The familiar scent of lemon cleaner and stale coffee hit me all at once. My mother was on the couch scrolling through her phone. My father was in the kitchen making a sandwich. Leah sat at the island filing her nails, bored and comfortable in a house that wasn't hers. My mother looked up first, her expression annoyed. "Why are you here?" No greeting, no concern, just irritation, like I'd interrupted her afternoon scroll. My father didn't glance up. "Shouldn't you be sulking somewhere?" "Heard your little trip fell apart," Leah smirked, tapping her nail file against the counter. "Yeah, thought you'd still be crying at the terminal. Guess the charity plane didn't wait for you." Their laughter echoed through the open space, careless and cruel. If they'd looked closely, they would have noticed my posture was different. My shoulders weren't curled inward. My voice wasn't small. I wasn't a guest in this house anymore. I set my bag down on the hardwood floor, pulled out the plain envelope, and placed it on the counter in front of Leah. "What's that?" she asked, eyebrow raised like I was wasting her time. "Your notice," I said simply. "All of yours." My mother snorted. "Notice for what? Eviction?" The room went silent. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to pause. I set 3 identical papers in 3 different places, one on the counter, one on the fridge, one on the bottom stair. My father stepped forward and ripped the one off the refrigerator door. "You don't own this house." I reached into the envelope again and pulled out the trust deed, setting it down calmly in front of him. "You signed a lease 2 years ago with Elmrook Trust." My mother folded her arms defensively. "We thought that was some management company." "It is," I said. "Mine." My father's face darkened. "This is ridiculous. You can't evict your own family." I tilted my head slightly. "You already did, remember? Twice before I turned 20. Leah rolled her eyes dramatically. "You're being dramatic. You don't have the money to own a house." "Interesting theory," I said. "Because the payments, the bills, the statements, and your signed lease say otherwise." My mother stepped closer, her voice rising. "This is a joke. You think you can scare us with paper? We raised you." "No," I said calmly. "You controlled me. You drained me. And you punished me for having a life you didn't approve of. My father threw the eviction notice onto the counter. Even if this is real, you don't have grounds. I pressed play on my phone. The recording filled the kitchen, their voices sharp and unmistakable. Cancel it. Teach her a lesson. She can take the bus. She's always so dramatic. Then their laughter, echoing through the tile backsplash. Leah stiffened. You recorded us? No, I said. I recorded my property being occupied by tenants who violated their lease and used emotional abuse to control me. My mother's face drained of color. Turn that off. But the recording played on, every cruel word hanging in the air like smoke. Leah slammed her hand on the counter. You can't kick us out. I have kids. We're a family. Exactly, I said. A family you didn't think twice about dismissing when you told my son to sit on the floor last Christmas because he wasn't a real cousin. Leah opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father tried again, his voice cracking slightly. Where do you expect us to go? I gave you 60 days notice on paper, I said. You ignored it. You're 3 months behind on rent, and you sent me those texts. I met his eyes directly. If a landlord got those messages from a tenant, you know exactly what would happen. You're punishing us for one joke, Leah snapped. That wasn't a joke, I said quietly. It was a confession. My mother grabbed the counter for balance. Lucia, be reasonable. Reasonable, I repeated. You canceled my ticket. You called me a loser. You told me to walk home, and you enjoyed it. My father's voice broke. You're really doing this? I opened the envelope one last time and pulled out the final sheet, placing it in the center of the island. Their faces went pale. It was the formal notice of enforcement, the document that allowed the sheriff to act. This, I said, is already filed. You have 3 days. My mother shook her head, tears forming. Not remorse, but panic. We didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, I said quietly. You did. You just never expected consequences. Leah looked around the room, suddenly small in the house she'd treated like her kingdom. What are you trying to prove? That I matter, I said. And that my son deserves better than watching his mother get treated like an unpaid servant. My father threw his hands up. Unbelievable. I picked up my bag. 3 days. The sheriff will handle the rest. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard my mother whisper, What happened to you? I paused and looked back over my shoulder. I stopped begging for a seat at a table I paid for. Then I walked away while they stood frozen in the doorway, their lives finally catching up to the choices they'd made. 3 days passed faster than any of us expected. On Thursday morning, a sheriff's car rolled up the street, quiet but unmistakable. My parents stood on the porch with half-packed boxes, their faces tight with disbelief, as if the world owed them a pause that never came. Leah wasn't there. She'd left the night before, dragging her suitcases down the driveway while arguing with her husband on the phone about money she'd spent without telling him. The sheriff walked them through the process calmly, giving them space to gather the last of their things. There was no yelling, no dramatic confrontation, just the slow unraveling of a family that had spent years pretending their cruelty was normal. My mother tried one last time, reaching for my arm as movers carried out her boxes. Lucia, she whispered, we're still your parents. I stepped back. And I'm still the daughter you never protected. She looked down, not at me, but at the house behind us, at what she thought she'd keep forever. When everything was cleared out, I left the sheriff a sealed envelope to place inside. In it was a photo of me and my son smiling, arms around each other. On the back, I'd written one line: "This is the family I choose." When I finally drove back to my condo that evening, the lake outside my window was still and bright, reflecting a peace I hadn't felt in years. My phone buzzed once, an unread text from Leah. But I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The airport, the canceled ticket, the insults, all of it had led me here, to the moment I stopped letting their version of family define my worth. My son ran to the door when I walked in, arms wide, certain of me in a way my parents never were. He hugged me tight and asked if I'd brought him something from the trip. I knelt down, looked him in the eyes, and said, "I brought us something better. I brought us peace." That was enough. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who taught you that love doesn't require you to shrink. It requires them to rise. And when they refuse, the kindest thing you can do for yourself and the people who truly matter is to walk away and let them face the world they built. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.